AI is the future and the present of work. It's here, it's inevitable, it's just about implementation.
I would call it African intelligence because most of these advancements have been trained here in Africa. We are the very big brains behind the machines. Data labeling is a bit wide. Let me use a practical example of an autonomous vehicle. For this vehicle to be able to understand that there's a human being on the road, it has to be fed with all this information. So what basically happens is you're given random pictures taken on the streets, for example, of any given town. And what you're expected to do is to work under a certain set of rules where like you're told to make sure you annotate correctly or rather label the content correctly. So for example, if we have to feed this vehicle with the pictures of human beings, it has to be human beings of various ages, sizes, heights and what have you.
I'm a brandist technologist, something of the sort. We're a brand that builds brands. So what I say is that we build impactful brands through artificial intelligence, but with real intelligence, so human intelligence. It will make it cheaper in that your workers are not bored and doing mediocre things because there is always something that can check, depending on the level of access that you give the tools to. It always cross-checks and amplifies anything they're doing. Two, the speed at which anything is done, it saves you money. Because like we say, time is money, I promise. It gives your people time to now do the cool work, the strategy work, the human work, so that you create the foundation. And whenever you feel the brands are getting old or tired, you tell him, he refreshes.
You have to invest, in the infrastructure itself. For example, if you're working as a freelancer. Someone tells you they want a speed of at least 15 Mbps. You know how much that would cost. Someone needs a machine that has, let's say, a 16 GB RAM, a Core i7, for example, with an SSD and all those specifications. With the setup, between 80 and 100,000 to have a setup. So it's not easy.
There's a very interesting thing that actually guys have never sat and thought about, and it's about the ethics, the bias, the racial discrimination, the sexism that comes with the tools. The tools will often mirror their creators, not even the trainers, because the trainers only access specific parts.
When I got to summer, I had my own financial challenges, and I had to look for a side hustle. Then what I came across was pornography as a project, where like someone gives you a pornographic video, and you're supposed to, put tags on every frame that you're working on. By frame, I mean by every second you're working on. So you realize you're working on pornography for several hours a day. For me, I worked for 8 hours a day, and I did that project for 8 months.
No. That's not what we are going to do. I think number one of the issues that we are going to raise, there is sometimes that workers are in a vague relationship. So you find some of them do not even sign contracts. So they do not necessarily know who is behind the task. So you find that workers are constantly working on tasks and then they are paid when the task is finished, or even sometimes they're not paid.
One of us, who happens to be our president, that is John Kinyua, did a research. And after the research, she actually noticed there were so many violations within that space. Through conversations with multiple people and organizations, we decided like the best way to have these issues addressed is through an entity. That is how we came up with Data Labelers Association.
Conclusively, I would say that we still do not have a substantial framework on the digital economy. However, there are opportunities that one can invoke when it comes to rights. And we've seen that in our courts in Kenya.
If you go to the US for the same jobs, someone is earning $50 per hour, but you're earning 0.75 for 1,000 tasks. Now, this is a training task. So I have to pass this for me to be able to access the paid tasks.
I don't even know if to call it a full circle moment, because my brother also was, I think, a content moderator as well. So I have seen the entire circle in how a content moderator becomes part of my brand with what we do with social media and things like that. The fact that a Kenyan annotator somewhere and a content moderator somewhere is who is helping make my Kimi, my manners, my Claude better perform, especially to a localized context of Africa and Kenya. And yet, for the thousands of dollars that we pay for tools as a collective, it's not even, I don't even think it's 100th of what actually gets to them.
There's risk of the race to the bottom, where you find that companies go from one country to the other country looking at which country has lesser protection, and then we are going to invest in that country. And when competition is high, then it means standards are also lowered in regards to how they price to get more maybe users and all that. We've seen judicial precedents where our courts have said that that the big techs can actually be sued in Kenya. So that goes a very long way because it then closes a loophole that is there in the law.
AI has been there and it's always been scary. It's a personal prerogative. It's a company prerogative to protect your people by implementing the right cybersecurity, enforcement and legal enforcement to protect your people. And it's also a country's, a nation's work to protect its people.
Today, so many people sit down as victims of AI, not beneficiaries of AI. And we need to find a lasting solution to this long-term problem. Because if AI cannot impact our lives positively, then is it worth being part of the conversation?